As I left university, started working, I did everything from the shelf stacking at Tesco's to flipping burgers at McDonald's, right the way through to joining a mail order company, and then I kind of hit my stride, or what I'd say is my dream job as an account manager within the IT industry.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Accidental Businessman. I am joined today by Ketan Makwana. I'm going to as usual, I'm going to let my guests do their own introduction because they know themselves better than I do. So, Ketan, would you like to just give us an introduction as to who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Wayne. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, I'm Ketan Makwana, business strategist, entrepreneur, investor, philanthropist. What do I do? I try to make as much or create as much impact as I can, and as my T-shirt says as well, create as much legacy as I can as well. And that's what I'm really about. That's the short description that you're going to get today.
All right, cool. So what we'll do, we'll come back to that because obviously what I need to know is I need to know how you became who you are today. So so what I want to do is I want to take you right back to what was life like for you as a child. What was growing up?
Um, so as a child, I come from a middle class family. My parents were immigrants to this country, coming from Africa. Um, so it was like any sort of typical middle class family. Parents work hard, sort of 7 to 7. As you grow up, it's school, home, TV, and stuff like that, basically. So real simple upbringing. Pretty much got everything that I wanted in life. It wasn't like I had to go without. My parents worked really hard for what they did. And for me and my sister, they were always out there. So kind of grew up in sort of northwest London. Went to sort of college and university. Didn't really find the fit at uni, so I dropped out, and that's where things start to take an interesting sort of turn, really. My parents are obviously I'm of African and Asian or Indian descent, and those people that those Asians that come across, they have high expectations for their children, thinking that they're going to become astronauts, physicists, doctors, or whatever it is that they think we're going to become. And going home, and being sort of first generation in my generation, firstborn in my generation, the pressure was on. My parents were very much didn't really understand why I wanted to drop out of university. So I had the whole battle with expectations and the whole typical "you're going to bring shame on the family" type of, and within sort of minutes you turn from being the one that everyone looks up to the black sheep of the family. And I guess that's kind of set the tone for what's coming, in my future. I didn't know it then, but I do realize it now. As I left university, started working, I did everything from the shelf stacking at Tesco's to flipping burgers at McDonald's, right the way through to joining a mail order company, and then I kind of hit my stride, or what I'd say is my dream job as an account manager within the IT industry. I worked very hard because I had this whole underdog mentality about me that I've got to prove people wrong. So I was always consistently challenging myself. So as I was going through this kind of period, I'm like, you've got to do better, you've got to learn more, you've got to get faster, you've got to push the results. And unconsciously, it landed me a job with Apple. So I was really young at the time. I was making more than my mum and dad put together in terms of salary, and by 1999, I was managing the supply chain for the launch of the iMac across whole of Europe for Apple. It was something that kind of was a little bit surreal. Obviously, still didn't know what Apple was going to surmount to. We had Y2K situation. For any of you who don't know what Y2K is, I'm not referring to the wrestler. Y2K primarily is year 2000. It was going to be the millennium bug, and they said the whole IT industry was going to implode. So my naivety, I moved away or resigned from a £45,000 a year job, literally with nothing to go into. And my dad was very much like, "You're an idiot," you know. Moved into electronics. Don't know anything about electronics. Started to work for a digital signage company, but over 5 years, I took them from £250,000 when I joined to 6.5 million in my own division, where I designed, co-designed, implemented the touchscreen registration system and call system that you have in your GP surgeries. And this came off the back of an experience that I had in my own doctor's surgery when I had to go for a medical for this new job. My name was mispronounced. My name's Ketan Makwana, but I was pronounced Cretin Marijuana, which, yeah, believe me, it's embarrassing. But things just come up from this. So I moved, just fast forwarding the sort of career up. From there, I moved out of electronics after a 5-year stint and moved into healthcare. I was told that you cannot get this job in healthcare without a 2:1 degree in medicine. Yet I got the job. In fact, for the next sort of 3 years, I kind of invested myself into learning about pharmacology, pharmaceuticals. I was training like a doctor was training and working at the same time. I was learning things like loss of resistance techniques. I was injecting into cadavers. I was learning about the pharmacology, contraindications, everything, to where I landed in a job around about 2008, where I was the global product manager for a renal and dialysis company, and I was designing dialysis rooms or dialyzer rooms into A380 Airbuses, and at the same time introducing the world's smallest dialysis machine to the UK for clinical trials. So here's a guy who hasn't really studied much, trained, been told consistently, I was never told that you won't amount to anything. It's just like, without this, you're not going to be able to do this. And I'm like, well, no. I have an ethos or a mantra of there's more than one answer to any one question, and that's just living proof of it. Sadly, my career came to an abrupt halt around 2008 when the economic crash came, and I, just like thousands of people in the UK, I became victim to the recession. I was made redundant, but that's perhaps where things took a turn. So your podcast is named The Accidental Businessman. I had no intentions in life to become a businessman. I wanted to be a career geek. I wanted to be the best that I could be within a career, have the 6-figure salary, the 3 holidays a year, be able to, lace my lady in Gucci and gold, and take the kids, get the kids best kind of presents. And then life had a different path for me. It just decided, you're not going to do that. You're going to do something else. So
did you think you were kind of like the universe pushed you?
At first, I didn't think that, to be honest with you, Wayne. Like with anyone, when you get impacted by something, some form of trauma, you're not thinking the stars are aligned on this is part of your journey. You become very judgmental. So the first thing that happened to me is, why me? Why am I losing my job? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to make money? How am I going to pay the bills? Is my wife going to stay? My kids going to hate me? Everything was about me. And that's what happens when people get impacted.
It's kind of like coronavirus now, isn't it? It's kind of like, with this, coronavirus, a lot of businesses that were, pretty much guaranteed that as long as nothing seriously happened, they were going to be absolutely fine. And then coronavirus has literally taken out so many businesses just in one white, so.
Well, it's taken them, and yes, there are some. The thing with that that perspective is the fact that there's an opportunity in everything, and the truth of it is all coronavirus has done, and people could sort of take me to task on this if they want to, but it's just my opinion. All coronavirus has done is put a magnifying glass on those that didn't know, weren't really in business, didn't know how to run a business, or shouldn't have been in business in the first place.
Yeah.
And what it's done is, I mean, no one was predicting, no one knew this was coming. And one of the biggest things that we were doing within my organization, working with our clients when the pandemic hit, was business continuation. It's as soon as the pandemic hit and as soon as the lockdown came, Wayne, the first thing, everyone else was cramming around. We were getting inundated with calls about doing digital training and all this kind of stuff. And I said, nope, cancel these contracts, get rid of these clients, create the capacity. We're going to turn around, and I go, all we're going to focus on is supporting our clients through this uncertain period pro bono. And the only commissioned work we're going to do is business continuation. We're going to help people redesign how their business should continue and what that policy needs to look like. So for me, as I say, there's more than one answer to any one question, and it's something that you will find repeats itself throughout my journey as I go along. And I knew that, as soon as this hit, I had to think about what as a CEO of my company, what am I going to do in my business? And that's exactly what we were preaching out to others. So yeah, circumstances do change, environments will change, situations will change. But the more you become judgmental and you feel sorry for yourself, the quicker you're going to fall out of business or be able to, or be pushed away from where it is that you want to be. And that's where judgment turns into resentment, and resentment then turns into toxicity, and that's kind of a downward spiral. It has an impact then not only on your professional life but also your personal life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really funny because the more I speak to people and business owners, leaders, and there is all somewhere in their chain a significant thing that happened. Because like I said, the reason I call this accidental businessman is because none of us woke up and went, I'm going to be a businessman.
Yeah.
There's been something that pushed them that way, and it's not always a huge trauma. Sometimes it's just an awakening. Sometimes it's just a realization that they're never going to be able to do what they really want to do with life if they stay where they are. You know what I mean? But I just find it interesting that literally every business person, from my experience and where I've been to, all have that common thing where there was something that made them go from happy to be number one, number two of a big company to being number one of their own company. Do you know what I mean? So when did you actually start business? When did you actually kind of like, it was just, you started that business, you doing it?
So as I said earlier, I had no intention of starting a business, but life has a funny way of throwing you certain curveballs. So obviously being made redundant, I had to join the job queues just like anyone else, but these job queues were 10 times bigger and longer, and it was very frustrating. And the one thing that I didn't have a lot of collateral in was time. Time was running out. The amount of money that I had left aside to pay bills, etc., was dwindling as time went on. So desire turned into necessity, where I started to say, all right, do I wait in this job queue or do I go off and do something else? So I decided to go self-employed. So it was not a business. I didn't think, there's a gap in the market and let me come up with this idea, or this is the right time now. I didn't know anything about business because I had no interest in starting a business. So I went self-employed. I did what I thought I could do, which was go back to my network, go back into industry that I'd worked in and say, look, you've got rid of your resources, but you still need to get work done. Have you got interim contracts that you can provide where I can furnish and service the projects? Ironically, the first client I took on was the very company that made me redundant. I went on and did a biopsy project for them, and then I thought to myself, this tube light switched on. I thought, okay, if my company or the company that used to pay me and give me a job is in this situation, there must be others. So I started to talk to so many other healthcare companies. Before I knew it, my mouth had written checks my body couldn't cash. And what I mean by that is I'd sold myself into so many, I pitched my way into different rooms and I'd signed contracts to deliver services on an interim basis with multiple companies. Um, Forget going from 0 to 5 figures. We went from 0 to 7 figures. And when I mean we, I mean me, my body, and my mouth. Basically, we went to 7 figures. We had literally under £1 million worth of contracts on the table, and I was doing the dad dance basically in my office, thinking, "Woohoo! Money's in. I don't have to worry about it." And then it dawned on me. It really dawned on me. I'm like, I've done all of this, but who's going to do the work? How am I going to be able to deliver everything? Most people at this point in time think either they failed or they put their tail between their legs and go back and give the contracts. I'm like, nah. I don't have any interest whatsoever going back and giving this. I've got to make it work. So whilst sitting there watching a bit of daytime TV, trying to figure out how to do it, it kind of dawned on me there must be other people like me who have lost their jobs, sitting there scratching their ass watching Jerry Springer or whatever it is basically on TV that comes on. So I started to push out. I went out on different streams like Twitter. Twitter was more the kind of in thing back then, and putting hashtags in and saying, look, if you're unemployed or if you've recently been made redundant, and you have expertise or skills in these areas, drop me a line because I may have some free money for you. That's how all I said. Who's not going to say no to free money? So it's kind of a situation where people started to connect with me, and I said, look, I'm looking for people that can do this project, this bit of a project, this bit of a project. And within a short period of time, we managed to service all that £1 million worth of contracting. And it's at that point I started to understand what I was in the business of. I wasn't in the business of being self-employed and servicing contracts. I was in the business of project management, finding projects and finding opportunities for others, making money off other people's money, basically. And that's where the business started. So I started my first company, an outsourcing agency, in the recession, doing the very thing that recruitment couldn't do, which is give people jobs. And the way I did that is by actually telling the companies that had the money and the resource and the opportunity, look, you can't afford an employee, but you still need business to continue right now. Because tomorrow, as the economy starts to recover and revive, you want to grow. But by that time, you haven't got anyone in your squad. You haven't got your star striker. You haven't got a midfielder. You've got nothing. All you've got is an empty locker room, which means that what you're going to have to do is go back and start again, which means that by the time you get to that position, the opportunity's passed itself. And I said, what we do is we just keep your team and your squad afloat on an interim basis. All I was doing is procuring those projects and then saying, who's the specialist out there in my network that can actually deliver this project. Now, if the project was 10k, for example, I would keep 3k for myself, and I'd use 7k as a budget to distribute the work. And that's, it's widely known in the construction industry. They do the same thing. People that want to build houses, they have a budget, and then they keep a margin for themselves, and the rest of it goes to the contractors. Simple model. Within 18 months, we had over 4.5 million in contract paper value and 300 self-employed professionals in our network. And it's at this point, as the recovery was coming in and jobs were starting to open themselves up, a large recruitment firm approached, and we ended up selling to them. So I'd scaled and sold a business in less than 2 years without even knowing or having an inclination of what I wanted to do, to be in business, basically.
That wasn't even your plan either, was it? It wasn't even your plan to build it and then sell it. It was just came that way.
Remember, it was necessity. All I wanted was to create enough money. See, my intention was always to go back to work, you see. That's what my family thought my intention was. My wife and my parents and everyone thought, he's lost his job. He's going to do whatever he can. He's going to hustle until such time that the 6-figure salary jobs start reappearing, and then he'll just go back to work. By the time they started coming, I'm like, I've done 4 million quid. I'm like, who's going to give you 4 million quid in in 2 years? I'm like, I don't want to go back. And that's where I guess I got my first taste for business, and I got my first taste for um, freedom.
Yeah.
Becoming more liberal.
So when did you
So
realise?
there we
When
are.
did you have that realization that you're a businessman?
Um, when halfway through building going away from the self-employment and sort of subcontracting to when I actually registered the company. That was the first kind of indicator that I'm now moving from self-employment into business. But really, becoming a businessman was very much on the point of um, when the recruitment firm came in and said, "Look, we want to make an offer on what you've got," because an entrepreneur brings value, but a businessman builds a business, and the 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 the, the acquirer was not buying my entrepreneurism; they were buying the business. So for me, it was that was the real kind of, it really cemented in my head at that point that you are a businessman.
It's it's really funny. It's I talked about this last week when I spoke to David Thompson. I was saying the thing I love more. I mean, all right, we're all in business to make money. That's ultimate. But I actually love business itself. I love coming up with like
Yeah,
projects and schemes and ideas. And if they, sometimes they don't come to fruition. Sometimes you're biting off more than you can chew. But
yeah,
it's the process, isn't it? It's that. I think that's the thing about if it's a thing, entrepreneurial spirit is that it's having a go, trying it, and not worried that it won't work. You just kind of go, well, I have to see it through. We might as well just see if there's anything around the corner, and if there's not, then I'll just pop around the other corner, and then I'll call time on it. But just I think that's what I mean. I think I just love that. I love trying stuff, and if it don't work, and people go, oh, that didn't work, didn't it? I'm like, well, I had a go.
well, you're absolutely right. So look, just come back to that point where I decided I'm no longer now going to go back to employment. I started my second business, which was a brand marketing agency, which looked for health and well-being brands from around the world to bring into Europe. So I did things like kinesiology tapes, and I did a glucose-based energy drink, which I got Cristiano Ronaldo as the global ambassador for, and all these kind of things. My folks, my family were very much, we don't understand what you're doing. This isn't going to work. Why are you being selfish? You're spending all hours, God send. And for me, um, my mindset, my attitude had turned away from the safety net and security of things and being reassured to actually, I wouldn't say I became risk orientated, but I became an opportunist. I thought to myself, then this is what you're talking about, Wayne. The fact that, you come up with new ideas, you come up with different ideas, you want to try them, you want to see what's around the corner. That's opportunism. It's seeing an opportunity in everything is what an entrepreneur does. Making money out of that opportunity is what a businessman does.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've met plenty of entrepreneurs. Is any of that actually going to make you any money anytime soon?
Yeah.
There's loads of people.
And you've got to sit there. You've got to sit there. You're going to have more doubters than you're going to have supporters. In fact, entrepreneurism and business is it's a lonely island or a lonely planet. You've heard this before, primarily because, I mean, as a CEO of my company right now, there are so many things that I cannot talk to anyone about apart from myself. I can only discuss these things with myself. Why? Because there are certain levels of technicality which my wife or my family will never understand. They're my supporters now, obviously, but if I talk to them about making an executive decision on the amount of employees that are going to stay and go, they don't understand how that works. So these are the kind of conversations that an individual has on their own. And it's the same thing, with doubters. Doubt is only brought from two things. The person that's doubting you either doesn't understand what it is that you're doing, or or could do that themselves. So it's not even envy. They have no envy built into it. And what they do is they just express fear. And it's not a fear of failure that they are really expressing, Wayne. It's a fear of success. If you are successful, what do you become? What is your life going to look like? Yeah, you see it all the time, the Tai Lopez's and the Ferraris and Lamborghinis and the yachts and the £1,000,000 in the hand and the hip hop videos that go off with it, basically. That's just a facade. The truth behind it is our industry and our world is riddled with doubt, uncertainty, negativity, and you've got to cut through all that noise, and
Yeah.
the only way you can is by keeping that conversation with yourself. So whilst it is lonely and isolated, it's also incubated as an experience of being a businessman for me, and it's important that you are comfortable with yourself. It's important that you're open to having a conversation with yourself. It's also important that you use a particular type of language which is progressive. So I was just talking to a serial entrepreneur who's the one of 4 people that had the global IP rights to Dirty Dancing. So he's a dear friend of mine, part of the network. He does a lot of mentoring for my clients from our company, and he was talking about mind hacking, and it was just fascinating to say that actually mind hacking isn't about deliberating a particular process, but it's about inducing your mind with a drip. Because if you took the analogy of a bottle of water which is full and an empty glass, if you throw the water at force, what happens to it? It will hit the base of the glass and splash back out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you drip it and induce it, actually you can control how it goes. And this is the important thing. When you and I are both in business in this particular way, we drip the process of mind hacking in. We control what we're doing, and we keep a consistent flow that allows us to keep moving forward. Otherwise, you become stagnant and you move on. And that's why I come back and say something like the pandemic. It's opportunistic, not a resistance thing. And I feel sorry for anyone that has lost their business or has crashed, but I would seriously ask you that: did you manage that business correctly? Did you control? Did you have the right mind hack? Because at the end of the day, things like this will come and go. I mean, the pandemic is just like an economic recession. These come round in circles,
Yeah.
and there is going to be collateral damage. But it's a real important, and just the last bit on this. This is something that changed in my psychology as I moved from and transitioned from being an employee to an entrepreneur to a businessman, basically. So I have so much more. I wouldn't say confidence, but I have so much more of a conversation with myself compared to when I was just working for someone else.
Yeah, because I think you have to believe in your gut as well, and you have to listen to your gut. It's really funny because I was speaking this morning to a business guy, and he wanted to pick my brain because he's got this opportunity to expand his business, and
Mm.
COVID's opened up that opportunity for him because and he was saying, look, I just want your opinion, so I know you're going to tell me straight, and I let him explain it all, and I just said at the end, I said, well, it all sounds really, really good to me. You've done your due diligence. You know what why are you not going for this? Because if this was before COVID, we wouldn't even have the conversation. You would have probably just fired the button and gone for it.
Mm. Mm.
And it literally was, like you say, it was just literally fear blocking him because I said, what you're not worried about it not working. What you're worried about is I said, every businessman will hit that pinnacle point where it's like, the next stage is a stage that I'm not used to. Like I was talking before, I come from a completely different background, mate, to yourself, so I've had that many times where I've gone, actually, this next stage will take me to another level. I don't mean that in a higher hierarchy or I said, what you're worried about is you're worrying about it being really, really successful, taking you completely out of this comfort zone you're playing in. Your fear is not failing because you wouldn't even be considering it. It wouldn't even be in your remit if you could see fail. You've hit that pinnacle point where it's going to take you to another level.
There's one other thing to add to that. There is also that person is also seeking assurance.
Yes.
And and I say to people that assurance is futile. There's two things that I mentor into the people that I work with. Reassurance is futile, and what I mean by that is the more you go out to seek reassurance, the more impact it's going to have in your ability to reach the destination that you want to. Because what you're doing is you're going out and you're trying to get the opinion of someone else to tell you, yeah, it's okay for you to go away and do that. Now, if they have to tell you that it's okay to do it, it's okay for them, not okay for you. So reassurance is futile. The second thing that I say is judgment increases friction while reducing freedom. So what I mean by that is a lot of people, they have this, they want the cake and eat it too. I want you to be able to tell me that this is the right thing to do. I want you to show me that it's the right thing to do. And I want evidence that actually I'm not going to fail, that I will succeed. And I will be much happier against the fear of success if I can see what my life is going to look like. Okay? Who can answer any of those Christians? I mean, even Mystic Meg couldn't do these kind of things, for crying out loud. The truth of it is what people are doing is they're creating a judgment straight away. So now you can, let's say, for example, it was the other way around. Let's say you were asking me my opinion. I want to go away and do something. Now, when you ask for my opinion, or you say, what do you think? Do you think I can do it? Your mind is saying one thing, your heart is saying something completely different. Your mind is saying, right, I'm open to hearing what the opinion is, but your heart is, please don't tell me that this is the wrong thing to do. I want you to tell me this is the right thing to do. I'll tell you it's the right thing to do, but it's because I believe I can do it, not you. Okay, it's easy for me to just flake it to you and just say, yeah, go ahead, do it. Challenge you in a completely different way. Where I turn around and say, well, I wouldn't do that. Look at this. Look at the state of this. Look at that. You haven't got that. You haven't got this. You haven't got that. You haven't got that. Which is what a mentor should be doing, calling you out. All of a sudden, you're like, you start judging. Have I got the right tools? Am I ready to do this? Why did I start this in the first place? You're judging. Friction. Eventually, you kind of snap, basically. So the truth of this is when people come from this, they come with a mindset of seeking advice and seeking opinion and seeking, but really the truth of it is I want reassurance and I want a guarantee, and those two things in life don't exist. Because you know they say that yesterday's a history and tomorrow's a mystery, but the point of it is you can't go back and change anything for what happened to you yesterday. You can't actually go and live in what's going to happen tomorrow. You can only be in the now. Okay, and what you're doing when you look for reassurance and you look for conviction and confirmation and guarantee is you're actually trying to live in the future. It's okay for you to do that because don't worry, you're gonna have loads of things. So it's brilliant the way you depict it and broke it down with the person that you were talking to. We said, look, if the pandemic wasn't here, you wouldn't even blinked your eye. You would have probably done it, by now. So what is it that's holding you back? You didn't look at it and say, yeah, go ahead. You've got the skills. You asked the question, flipped it and said, stop judging. And what is it that's stopping you from doing it right now? And the person is like, I don't know what I'm going to become. Well, don't worry about what you're not going to become. Worry about not doing it, because if you don't do it, you're not going to become whatever it is that you're going to become. Absolutely. So it's a real powerful lesson there that you've kind of raised it. So.
Like you said, if he'd come to me and said, he hadn't run his numbers, hadn't done his, done his research, if he hadn't done any of that, then the first thing I would have said, well, you need to go away and do that. You need to be informed. You don't make uninformed choices and then expect them to be the best. You've got to make an informed choice. He's done all that. I think he just, he wanted that reassurance. And I couldn't, like you said, mate, I couldn't give him the reassurance, but I just said, like, what's the difference between now and a year ago? Well, a year ago I'd have done it. Well, I think you've already answered your question, haven't you? You already knew what you wanted. I know why you need my
perspective change.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think Wayne, what you've done there is he already had the answer. He just needed that answer to be prodded up to the top, brought to the top, brought to the service. And it is a situation where people do that. They have this whole thing. I mean, I had a fear of heights and things like this. I talk about this in my pain, panic, and fear in my in my TEDx talk, for example, and there's this whole bit about abseiling. So, if you've ever abseiled in life, the whole purpose of it is you've got this bit of rope, wrapped around your waist, basically, and what are you doing? You're facing backwards off the edge of a cliff, or a mountain or something like this. You're already told don't look down. So what's the first thing you do, Wayne? You look down, all
Yeah.
right? And then they say lean back, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? I've only got this rope, and it's what it is you're looking. You've got all the answers. You can do it. The rope is there. The harness is there. It's strapped onto everything. But you don't see any of that. All you see is this one little bit of rope and this whole thing of you going all the way down the bloody side of a cliff. However, as you do trust the process, and as the coach or the mentor or the instructor in this analogy, reassures you that you need to lean back in order for you to move forward. And what I mean by that is to go down. Essentially, as you do it begrudgingly, you do make a rough or a hash of getting down there. But once you're down and you look back up, you're like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it
And
was.
you want to go and do it again.
And actually, exactly, and that's what happens. What's happened here is your competence and confidence are at such balance,
Yeah.
there's such equalization that you do it unconsciously.
Yeah, and if you went back up the second time, you'd literally wouldn't even think about it. You'd lean back, you'd go right, you just go. And then each time you do it, you just go down faster. But now you're trying to challenge yourself and go, now I want to do it faster. Now I want to go higher. And I want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want more fear. Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same principle in business. When you're embarking this and you seek reassurance and guarantee, which you shouldn't. What you're looking at is just the change of perspective. The reassurance that you're looking for is that you've got all the tools and resources around you to enable you to go and do it. Don't fear going off and doing something. Fear and not doing it right, because it's not about doing it right the first time or perfection. It's about actually undertaking the activity. So he could have gone on and he could have started this opportunity, and it maybe doesn't go exactly the way he planned in the first kind of quarter or period. But you just like the analogy we had of the abseil, and you go down, you go back up, you keep going, you become more and more of a professional. You become more an expert at what you're doing here. You already understand where the gaps are and the flow. And like you just said, I want to now go faster. What is that? That's actually stealth now. You're actually going into a stealth mode, which is right. I don't need to worry about all of these things anymore. I don't need assurances. I need to push, get there. Can I do it faster? Can I get there stronger? Can I be bigger? And that's the true measure of what needs to happen. So if anyone's listening to this right now, watching this, and you're kind of tiptoeing over whether you should or shouldn't do something, I'll tell you right now, just don't do it. Because you just haven't got the right mindset. If you're seeking assurances, they don't exist. If you're looking for a guarantee, doesn't exist. All you've got to do is get yourself to a point in your mind. So if you have to go to a mentor, a coach, a friend, a colleague, another business, a competitor, whatever, go and get the assurances of you've got all the resources around you to take the action, and take the action. Don't worry about failing or succeeding or perfection. Worry about not doing it. Once you've done it once, you'll know exactly what you've got to change, what levers you need to adjust, and how effective you're going to become. And the more you do it, the more slick you become, the more you become proficient in what you're doing.
I think it's I always say to me, people when I meet them and they'll say, oh, it's all right for you, and I want to go, when you want to go through the whole, like, have you I could start at the beginning, but I don't have enough time. But it's that fear. A lot of people have that fear of what people might think if they fail. What will people say? And I always say to people, like, they're not you. They're not living your life. They're not in your head. They don't understand how you tick, and they can empathize, but that's all people can do. They can offer an opinion, but like ourselves, everybody else wants. So,
but there are two sides to that coin, Wayne. One, and I don't mean in a good. I mean two level sides. There are two heads on this coin. Yeah. Essentially, on one side, what it is you're worried about. If you're worried about how other people will perceive you, that's all judgmental. Remember, judgment increases friction whilst reducing freedom.
Yeah.
And on the other side, when people do make these judgments, they only see the top of the iceberg. They don't really understand what people have gone through to get to where they are. Which for me, at the end of the day, um, when I set out a goal, when I set out a challenge, when I set out something that I want to go and do. Yes, okay, yeah, I will go away and do it. But I have this, and this is the thing. When we say it, it sounds so arrogant and egotistical. But I don't care what you think. I don't care what anyone has as a point of judgment to me. Like you just said, they don't know you. They don't know where you're coming from, what you've gone through, and the truth of this is, they will never know. Because they don't want to know. All it is for them is a top dangle result. Basically, if I stood to wait to hear the opinions of even the people that I care about most, you know what? I'll just be going around the roundabout consistently. I'll just end up exactly where I am, and then there's no one else to blame but yourself. But you will create, and that's when I say judgment turns to resentment, and resentment then is I resent everyone and everything. And all of a sudden, every single thing that you want to do is a Mount Everest.
Yeah, and that's a very, very extra lonely place when you now resent everybody. So you feel you've got nobody you can turn to, nobody gets it. And then that mountain again is even higher because you almost feel like you got to climb past all these people first. And then
Exactly.
once you get to the summit, you can stand there with your arms out going, see, I told you all. But, it's just, yeah, no, it's not a healthy way to live. So,
Actually, with your analogy on that, very quickly. Sorry, I know you've
oh, no,
got
no, go.
other things that you want to ask. Is when you reach the top of or the summit of anything that you want to. So whether you're climbing a mountain and you reach the top, or you're in business and you reach the top, or whatever it is, understand that you're only there for a moment. You're only going to stand there for a moment. You're going to observe, enjoy the view, and then you've got to understand that you've now got to start coming down, back down again.
Yeah.
No one stays at the top all the time, and if they believe they do, that's where you start to create yourself a false economy, in my opinion. So it's understand that life is full of, this is why they talk about the heartbeats and how entrepreneurs are working this kind of up down manner. We are constantly going to summits, coming back down to surface, going to summits, coming back down to surface, go to summits, but respecting that and understanding that you hit, and the reason why I'll say that to you is you've got to know when you've got to get out of your own way, and you've got to know that in business is most people treat their business like their child, their baby. It's I gave birth to this. But just like a child, your business gets older. It produces it creates its own character, personality, its own direction. At some point, you're going to have to let go of it. When it goes to school, when it goes to the party or the disco, or when it goes out for its first night out with its mates, basically. All these times as a parent, you're worried about the business. And this is something that I'm saying to you because it's happening to me right now. Enterprise Lab is 10 years old, my fifth venture, 10 years in the running. In May this year, we turned 10. I've taken the business from zero to almost a 9-figure business. We work across 26 countries. We work with over 200,000 people. I've designed government contracts which are worth millions. All of this kind of work is all put there. But towards the back end of last year, which in the pandemic we had the best revenue year in the history of the company, I was like, I've got everything I want in my business, but I'm not content. I'm not happy. Something's missing. After I got COVID, so I had COVID on New Year's Eve, I started to show symptoms for about 2 to 3 weeks. I was out of commission. I really started to try and address and answer some questions that I'd been brushing on the carpet. And the truth of it is that I was missing feeling the impact of the work that I was doing. Remember, I told you earlier, one of 2 things that us all entrepreneurs want: impact and legacy. Okay, I can see my legacy in front. That's not a problem. But I was losing impact. I mean, if I tell you today, My company has a 6-year contract with the government of Thailand to work with 5,000 small to medium businesses to create 250,000 new jobs and just under $4 billion of GDP growth. You think that's sensational, it's amazing. But for me, it's just pen paper design, a structure and a strategy. I'm not feeling the euphoria of someone who's going through our training and being able to internationalize their business, or seeing a family business owner who's been they've been passed down from generation to generation, start breaking down and crying because we've got to the root of their problem. I don't see and feel that anymore, and for that reason this year I'm stepping down from my own company. I'm stepping down, getting out of my way, and to say I'm going to bring a successor in to take it into the next decade. And that's an important thing to realize as well. Business is not just about creating wealth and money, and you can create impact. And I've done the impact thing. When I started out in my journey, I just lost my way because I was too busy scaling impact to now come back and say to myself, what's the thing that's most important to me? And important is to feel good about what you do. And it's the same thing with you, where your business and what you do. You work in the health and fitness industry. Your business is not just about helping others feel good about themselves, but you've got to feel good about what you do in your business. The minute you don't feel good in what you're doing, you're undoing everything that you've built in your business. So after a 10-year stint, I've kind of said, it's time for me to hang my boots, go up, become chairman, and go off do my own things. So this year, I turn a commentator, I've become a podcaster, I'm becoming a reporter, I'm going back to keynoting, and I started my own foundation, a philanthropic foundation basically, which has now already got 4 major projects. One in Jamaica for solar panels into 1,600 schools across there. One with a prominent artist, musician in the US, looking at teenage suicides and stuff like that. We've got some stuff going on in India and some stuff kind of going on in Africa. And this is all started 3rd week of January this year. We are currently 3rd week of March. So it just goes to show where, focus, energy flows where focus goes, basically, in that respect. But you've got to be honest with yourself as a business owner as well. Don't just go out there for the status. Learn and understand that your business is just as organic as you are. It breathes, it has a heartbeat, it will grow, and sometimes it also outgrows you. There are times where you have to let go.
I think it's your t-shirt says it all, because I don't believe that ego and legacy can live together. So, we all start things, and like you're saying, you build it, and it's nice to tell people, yeah, you know what, I've done right. But like you said earlier, at some point you have to kind of go, okay, I have to remove my ego from this.
Yes.
And I think this is the biggest thing where businesses don't scale, is because what they do is they think they can steer the ship constantly. Like I'm 51 and I love the game, and I'm always, but there's other projects. Like I spoke to you probably over a year ago about doing Accidental Businessman, didn't I? And I want to do a book, but then I thought, I don't know how many people are going to listen to me, like a fitness business owner. And, so what I want to do is I want to listen to other people's influence and think, maybe I'm looking for some validation. Maybe this is my way of going, okay, what, man, you do maybe know what you're talking about a little bit, and maybe some people might listen. So I just, it's been able to allow me to do, like you've just done, do these projects, do these things that I'm passionate about and I want to do. And then being able to hand my businesses over to, like Chris is sitting across the road from me now, and just go, he's hungrier, he's keener, he's younger, he's passionate, he's like more passionate than me. So that's what I want to do.
Exactly. He's exactly what you were 10 years ago.
Yes.
And it's a bit like either recharging the batteries of the business or putting new batteries in. You've got a choice of two. The chances are of recharging your batteries is difficult because you've lived a whole life and relationship with your business up to a stage where now it's meant to be. And the whole Robert Kiyosaki model of being a self-employed solopreneur, business owner and investor, this is me. This is me now. I started self-employed. I went to become a solopreneur. I then became a business owner. Now I'm becoming an investor. I'm actually, it's where you make everything work for you. But the truth of this is I have infinite freedom, freedom of choice. I have infinite time now because I choose what I work on when I work on it. So it means time is not a restrictor anymore, and money doesn't mean money anymore. The word is turned into wealth, and wealth turns into so many different things. Happiness, contentment, being able to go to sleep at 9:30 without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Taking your dog for a walk whenever you want to. That's what I mean in terms of all these areas. So as your business matures, you need to mature with it. If you don't, you can really quickly undo all the great things that you've done.
Yeah, you just suffocate it. And for me, I've always said, like, one of the great things I heard a long time ago is if you bring in people to help you run the business, work for you, however you want to word it, hire people that are better than you. There's no point in hiring people or who have the potential to be better than you. You know what I mean? Have the growth, because like you just said, I can replace the batteries now, and Chris can now take the company completely. He might see things that, I'm 51, maybe I'm like, I'm okay. I don't need to be doing this and that, and so I can leave it to him and let him do it. And it's freed me up to be able to do some joint ventures and to get into things that I ordinarily wouldn't have the time for.
You moved your peripheral vision, which was channel tunnel, to
Yeah,
you reopened the scope. Now, that's the same thing here. At the end of the day, I've created something. Now I've taken it to where it is. Now the future of this is down to how I now onboard or recruit in. So, and then once I've done that action, it's all about trust. I've got to be able to sit back and trust that this is going to take it to where it needs to go. Now, I can have an expectation and say, right, I want you to 10x this business in 10 years. Okay. But the truth of it is I don't know if that's what this business needs. It could become a situation that it could be that this business gets dismantled, and within 3 years of the next 10 years, it's sold for like 100 million to someone. Who knows? So the truth of it is don't bring your future expectation into the business. Understand that you've taken it here, but whoever you're bringing in, you need them to share their vision with you to be able to say, this is what I see, this is how I could. Chris could look and say, I can turn this into a 50 outlet gym nationwide, blah 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 blah, basically. And you could say, but I don't want that. But you're not in the business anymore.
absolutely.
And equally on the journey to 50, you may turn up, a bigger company comes in and says, actually, do you know what? We don't want you to waste your time. Here's 20 million, and you're like, this is it. This is my kind of, not get out of jail, but this is my retirement fund done, basically. And now I can now go off and do other things because you've got all of your elements now. You've got the money side, you've got the freedom of choice, you've got your passion project, you've got air, you've got time. Basically, everything is built in. So your priorities need to change as you grow older with your business. And for me, the two most prominent things that need to change in your priority is how you use your time. So, the power of no and priority, and understand that wealth is not all money. Stop having a spend mentality and start to recruit an invest mentality.
And that's been, again, probably the last 3 years where my head's been at massively. Rather than trying again chase money to look in, you're doing well to other people, because like yourself, I felt like there was people that had to prove why I did what I did and why I left my career to do what I did, and you have to justify it, so you waste money on stupid shit. And then you kind of go, actually, do you know what? It doesn't really matter anymore. And I think it's I love the whole thing. There's one question I want to finish with, because obviously, this is why I want to keep these podcasts kind of like, I've got questions, but I think when I'm talking to people like yourself, mate, I can't do questions because your life is just way too like complex, interesting.
You're gonna have to call me back. That's all.
It doesn't fit questions, does it? But okay, so what would you tell your younger self?
It's funny because I actually asked this question a lot to others in my podcast. In fact, every single guest that I've had
God's
on my
honest truth, man.
podcast.
I've not stole it from you. I promise.
No, it's okay. It's okay. The reason I say that is because it's interesting because the role is reversed now. It's kind of right. Okay, well, you keep asking everyone what you tell your younger self. Um, I think there are three things that I would like to say to my younger self. The first thing is trust the process. Um, and why I say that is you when you're young, you're very vulnerable, you're very impressionable. And what I mean by that is that the grass is greener on the other side, or you can your imagination can take take control of you, and you're gonna it's a hockey stick thing. You're gonna have to go down before you're gonna go up,
Yeah.
basically. So in any areas where you have doubt, just keep trusting the process. Just keep on that track. The second thing that I would say to my younger self is don't be hard on yourself. Um, just because things didn't work the way you expected them to work doesn't mean that they can't work the way that they work. And you see, the way I deem failure is the distance between expectation, which is the top arm, and your delivery. Okay, so usually most people see failure as something not happening, or not, because it hasn't met their success factors.
Yeah.
But you have a choice. You still have a choice. Just because things didn't work out, don't be hard on yourself. I've done that. I've put a lot of pressure on myself as I was going through my younger years. As I said, I was very hard. I was very competitive. I had this whole chip on my shoulder that I've got to be underdog and prove everyone wrong. And going hard on yourself can actually, again, fracture where you could potentially be. I reckon I could, in another life, in a different way, I could have been just as successful in something else, or even more, in a different way. Now, I don't live that life, but I think, anyone out there giving yourself a hard time, if you do that, then the rest of the world will as well. So that's that. And the third thing is, it is more than anything else. Don't chase money, and learn as quickly as you can the investmentality. Investing, is a measured for return, whereas spending it's a false economy. So they're the three things that I would say to my younger self.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time,
No, thank you.
mate. Do you know what? It's really funny. I spoke to David Thompson last week, and I came away from that thinking, do you know what? I could actually sit there and chat with that guy all day, and I feel the same about yourself, mate. I think I
Well,
appreciate your time. I know like
oh,
people.
one thing to say there: don't put me, you, and David Thompson in one room. Then, otherwise, what's going to happen is we're never going to finish
I,
gassing
I
on.
just I just think it's fantastic. There's people like yourself and David who are very, very, very successful people. And again, I don't like to measure like by how much money you make. You're just driven, passionate. You've seen through things that you wanted to do, and you've seen it through, and you've seen it, and it's gone beyond what you imagined it. And then you've kind of rode with it and learned and bounced and been punched in the face, and you've had all that. And I just think I love it. And then in social media world, there are so many superficial people that you think, just because he stood in front of the Ferrari doesn't mean that he's a successful businessman. It just means that he
So
bought a
always
Ferrari.
remember that. Always remember, judgment increases friction while reducing freedom. You want freedom, so why you keep judging?
You know,
It creates so much of that. And you all, I mean, I have a lot of time for you, Wayne, and everything that you do, in the way you do it, your approach, your philosophy to things, etc. And it's not that you know it all. That I know that behind the scenes there are a lot of lessons that you've experienced for yourself,
yeah,
and it's this path, it's this whole path of, let's not hold on to our lessons and keep them as secrets. Share them with the world.
yeah,
I love the whole philosophy that you have. If only one person needs to see this and feel it, that then my job is done. because that is the right attitude and the right thing to be putting forward. We need more and more of that. So
I think as human beings, being able to have a positive effect on somebody else's life. I think maybe it comes from my medical background and stuff like that. Maybe but I just think it's priceless. You can't buy that. You
no,
can't buy being able to create some positivity for somebody that makes them feel better about themselves, and then they go on and pass that on. I mean, it costs nothing. And today, you giving your time today doesn't affect if it cost you any money, but